So pasteurization is what I call a good example of the Marxism that has infiltrated the practice of agriculture in this country. You know, Karl Marx preached the industrialization of agriculture and animals as units of production. And what pasteurization has done in this country has accomplished the Marxist dream of getting rid of small farms, because the centerpiece of rural life in America for decades, for centuries, was the dairy farm, the small family dairy farm. And of course, you know, the Marxist hates small farmers and has various ways of getting rid of them. One is to just kill them. One is to starve them. One is to expropriate their property. Or finally, they can just implement mandatory pasteurization. It takes longer, but dairy farms are, well, I say that takes longer because it starts with this attitude that milk is just a collection of fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Dairy farms in this country go out of business at the rate of 16 per day. California lost 600 dairy farms in 10 years. The only dairy farms making a profit in California today are the raw milk dairy farms. Maryland, state of Maryland, had 1,900 dairy farms in 1990. Today, there are less than 400. So I think we can see what compulsory pasteurization laws have done. They are largely responsible for the decline of American small towns and rural life. And what pasteurization does is transform what should be a local value-added product into a commodity product. All because we do not see the extraordinary in the ordinary glass of milk. Well, the good news is that raw milk today is the fastest growing agricultural product. It's now available in 44 states. And it's coming. We were able to use a little loophole in the state of Maryland. We got a permit to sell raw milk as pet milk. I noticed that they had raw frozen goat milk in the health food store, and it came from Pennsylvania. Oh, lovely. And I was able to get a meeting with some people in the governor's office, and I just kind of slammed this carton down on the big mahogany desk. And I said, look at this. This is raw milk. It's being sold in Maryland. It's completely legal. And it's coming from a farm in Pennsylvania. And I'm a farmer in Maryland, and I want to do this. And you can't say no to me. If you allow this from a Pennsylvania farm, Anyway, there's now about 3 dozen pet milk permits in the state of Maryland, so that's really good. She can help deliver cleaner, greener, delicious food. Whether consumers want it is another question, and of course, our job is to make sure that consumers don't want this crap. But anyway. And in the article was an admittance that I had always suspected, but I'd never read it anywhere. And it was that plant-based milks are more profitable than the cow-based varieties. So the plant-based foods, I mean, right here is the reason that they want you to eat plant-based foods, because they're more profitable. My son, one of my boys, is a chef. He said, you know, Mom, if you order a steak in a restaurant, 50% of what you pay for that meal goes for the ingredients, mostly the steak. If you order a plant-based kind of vegetarian meal, 25% of what you pay for goes to the ingredients. If you order a muffin, it's only 15%. So that's what they want you to eat, muffins. You know. So food scientists, and this is what it said in the article, Food scientists base their labors on the assumption that milk is just fat, protein, sugars, mineral, and water. They don't even mention vitamins, so just fat, protein, sugars, minerals, and water. And so can easily be reproduced in the laboratory from other ingredients.
Fucking idiots.
The notable vegetarian Henry Ford said, "It is a simple matter to take the same cereals which the cows eat and make them into milk, which is superior to the natural article and much cleaner." Okay. Now, this is what Joel, are you here, Joel? Okay. Well, this is what Joel would call an example of Western Greco-Roman compartmentalized, fragmented, systematized, linear, reductionist, individualized, disconnected, parts-oriented thinking. Ooh, that's a mouthful. And I would also add, I could add another word to that, Joel, that you left out. I can't believe you left this word out. Materialistic. Okay? These are materialists. They believe that in the beginning was matter. Matter was God. Matter was with God. And nothing was made except by matter. I mean, that's what they believe. There's no other dimension. There's no spiritual world. There's no vibrations. There's just matter, okay? Well, let's look at some of these things in milk. Let's start with one of the sugars, a sugar called oligosaccharides. When scientists discovered oligosaccharides in milk, they said, well, nature must have made a mistake. After all, it's all by chance anyway. So nature made a mistake, and here are these oligosaccharides in the milk, and human beings can't digest oligosaccharides, so that's a big mistake. Well, it turns out that oligosaccharides are the perfect food for healthy bacteria in the gut of the infant, and so there's a very good reason for it to be there. But in those days, all bacteria was bad. We've had a complete paradigm shift about bacteria. Also, they found polysaccharides in the milk, and we know that polysaccharides are really hard to break down. But again, they encourage the growth of the good bacteria in the gut. So there's some really extraordinary sugars in this thing we call milk. Let's talk about fats in the milk. Now, when they make baby formula, they put vegetable oils in. They're not really fats, but there's a couple of really extraordinary fats in human milk, and one of them is called DHA. It's a very complex omega-3 fatty acid that's critical for brain development. And there's another fat in the milk, one that you may not have heard about, called arachidonic acid. Anyone heard about arachidonic acid? Okay. Arachidonic acid is a really critical fat. It's an omega-6 fatty acid. 11% of our brain is arachidonic acid. It's very important for your digestive tract. We need arachidonic acid for tight cell-to-cell junctures. Where do we need tight cell-to-cell junctures? We need it in our gut and our skin. So the skin's not leaky, the guts are not leaky, and that is arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid is actually kind of shaped like a hairpin. So I always think of these little hairpins holding our cells together. But anyway, guess what? There's only one place we can get arachidonic acid: animal fats. And here we have been avoiding animal fats all these years, and what do we have? An epidemic of gut problems, an epidemic of brain problems, an epidemic, so cold I can't pronounce epidemic, but an epidemic of skin problems, and an epidemic of addictions. Guess what other thing we use arachidonic acid for? We use it to make natural cannabinoids. Same thing that's in marijuana. We make naturally out of this very special fat that's only in animal fats. So, what my prescription is for addictions, especially addiction to marijuana. Butter, 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 butter. Eat lots of butter. Okay. There's also a fat in milk called butyric acid. It's pretty unique to butterfat in milk. And butyric acid is really critical for gut health. And we want, in the colon, you want a predominance of butyric acid. It's happy. Cholesterol. Now, cholesterol is the biggest mistake that we find in nature. Cholesterol is going to kill you. It's going to give you heart disease. But turns out that cholesterol is really, really high in milk, especially mother's milk. And not only that, there are special enzymes that ensure that 100% of that cholesterol is absorbed.
Young people are being given prescription meds, basically handed out like candy, and conventional therapies that lead them nowhere fast. This may be part of the reason real foods like meat and raw milk are part of a new movement, if not an out rebellion.
For me, actually, I'm very excited to be here. More excited than usual for other podcasts, just because of Weston A. Price, and Nutrition and Physical Degeneration was one of the first books that I read in this whole space. I mean, it's just such a fantastic read, and everything you guys do is awesome.
It's amazing. It points to ancestral wisdom. We're so thankful to be a part of this movement, which is gaining steam. I want to ask you, though, Will, what was your aha moment? When did you realize, okay, the standard American diet and lifestyle just isn't working for me?
Well, it actually started when I was living in LA. This was about 3.5 years ago. And I was walking around. I think I just filmed a video for when I was working at a company I was at. And my foot just started hurting horribly. It felt like I had rocks in my shoe, like someone was stabbing my foot. And so I go to the doctor. I didn't have any cuts on it or anything. I go to the doctor and say, oh, this is gout. I'm like, isn't that what old people get? Don't old people get gout? But yeah. I didn't even know what it is. They call it the King's disease. Like, it might be kind of fitting, whatever. And so the doctor, he starts telling me, he says, you got to cut down on red meat. You need to eat more vegetables, more salads, things like that. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know any better at this time. And so I cut out the red meat. I mean, like lean turkey and stuff like that, and lots of vegetables and things like that. And my gout didn't improve. It got worse, actually. And I felt like I couldn't walk. I didn't know what to do. And so I started looking online for other things and other alternatives. And I heard about raw milk and I heard about red meat, and that actually these things about inflammation that they say are caused by red meat, it's not the case at all. Saturated fats, and they're all vilified and all this causing inflammation. It's really not the case. And so I was like, well, this vegetable and lean meat thing isn't working. Let's try something else. And so I tried going on red meat. I procured raw milk in California, which is actually one of the best states for raw milk, which is surprising for a lot of people. Got raw milk and switched my diet to basically fruits, raw milk, and red meat. And my gout completely went away. And I haven't had gout since then. It's been fantastic. My dietary changes, lifestyle changes has made that inflammation completely gone.
How old were you when they diagnosed you with gout?
It's embarrassing, like 25 years old. So, it's not the greatest thing to say I'm 25 years old with gout. That's a horrible thing to say. But I think it goes to show what is very indicative of our society today, in the sense that even someone as young as me at 25, and I wasn't like just a complete couch potato or anything, but I ate for convenience. I would go and have something on my lunch break or at dinner and order something. It didn't seem all that bad. It just felt like this is what everyone else does. So it's just very strange.
What did the doctor say, Will, when you were like, okay, everything's turned around and reversed? Did you ever go back to that doctor?
No, I didn't go back to that doctor, because then I was like, well, there's no way that these people are trained right. And this was right around, I think, when COVID was starting to happen too, or like right before COVID. And then COVID happened. And then you have these same doctors who are telling everyone you got to get jabbed and you got to wear your mask and the 6 feet and all this nonsense. And I was like, well, if these same people are saying this, what does all this connect to? How is all of this related? There must be some sort of reason, because this guy didn't help me. And then he also wants people to do this. It doesn't seem very helpful in any of these kind of things. And so looking into all of it and seeing, wow, we've been lied to about so many things in our health. I mean, thinking for so long how bad butter is for you, just as a very simple thing, is something that was ingrained in me as a kid. Eat lettuce, don't eat butter. And that's pretty simple right there that you get told. And now I realize it's a complete opposite. And I wish, maybe you guys would like this, but I could send you guys some before and after pictures of my diet that you guys could put on the screen or something for the people who are watching. It's ridiculous, losing like 12 pounds, going all lean, muscle mass, everything, just from the dietary changes and other stuff.
When Sally wrote her book, Nourishing Traditions, it was pushing back against what she called the diet dictocrats. The people saying go low fat, all the things you're saying, eat lettuce, avoid butter. But it just shocks me that here, so many years later, probably over 20 years later, that message is still going out.
Yeah, I don't get how it's like I'll go meet people, and I guess I'm online all the time and doing research, and I'm becoming a health coach and getting everything I can so that I can influence people and talk to people about these things. And I'll talk to someone and they have no idea. And I guess I'm kind of in the echo chamber a little bit of thinking like, doesn't everybody know that butter is good for you now? Isn't that like what they're talking about? But people still don't know. They have no idea. I try and tell people about these things and like, that no way. Butter tastes so good. I don't want it. That's going to make me fat. Lettuce tastes bad, but apparently it's good for me because it tastes bad. It's like these very ingrained type of modalities that people have when it comes to nutrition that are just completely outdated. And even a lot of the, I guess you could say more mainstream people are starting to come out about whole fat dairy and, the HDL versus LDL and cholesterol and those kind of things. So there is like a resurgence of that, but the government standards with the USDA and the food fill my plate thing or whatever it's called, because I know they don't do the food pyramid anymore, but it's like the
my plate.
Like these are still completely backwards.
Is this one reason you wrote your book, Do Not Comply? Did it have to do with the nutrition guidelines or more than that?
Yeah, when I think about Do Not Comply, because I'm actually naming my health coaching business Do Not Comply Health, because really what all this comes down to, when you hear Do Not Comply, you think of COVID and you think of the vax and the masks and distancing. But really, it's about anyone who wants to turn you into a slave, right? I'll talk to so many people who are now on this new dietary trend and doing these things. And when I was eating pizza and DoorDash, whatever nasty stuff, and not eating healthy, no one said anything. But then I go and say, well, I want to drink raw milk. I want to eat beef all the time. I want to eat fruit is basically my only source of carbs. And they're like, you're crazy. You're a crazy person. I'm like, I'm eating what is so basic and like Occam's razor, the most simplest solution. And you're telling me this thing with 100 other ingredients is the normal way to live. I think it really just comes down to doing the most simple things. Do Not Comply is about anyone trying to make you into a slave and tell you that you cannot question what this actually means or what the purpose of this actually is.
Yeah.
Every single thing that you find in blood, except for red blood cells, is in milk. Leukocytes, lymphocytes, all these long words, neutrophils, immunoglobulins, antibodies, they're all in milk. And they build the immune system of the infant, or they support your own immune system if you're an adult. Milk was actually used for transfusions in World War I when they didn't have milk banks, or blood banks, They had raw milk, and they used it very successfully for transfusions. So milk is rightly called white blood. Now, all of these components, even the sugars, are warped, distorted, destroyed by this thing we call pasteurization, by heating the milk, so-called to get rid of bad germs. And this is a perfect example of what I was saying earlier, or what Joel always says. It's an example of Western Greco-Roman compartmentalized fragmented, parts-oriented thinking. That's what pasteurization is. It takes nature's most fragile, integrated, and delicate food and treats it as an industrial product and thinks, well, we can just smash it and heat it. Most milk today is ultra pasteurized. It's rushed past the superheated stainless steel plate and heated to 230 degrees Fahrenheit. You can't do that in your kitchen. If you boil milk, it only gets to 212. You have to have a real industrial process to get liquid milk to that temperature. Why do we really pasteurize? The real reason we pasteurize is for convenience. The first pasteurization laws were passed in 1913 in New York, compulsory pasteurization. The committee that passed this law knew that raw milk was healthier. They knew that raw milk could be produced in a healthy way, safe, healthy way. But they said, we don't have the funds, the money to go out and inspect all these little farms. And if we had pasteurization, we would impose a lot of this inspection on the milk companies, and it'd just be a lot easier for us if we didn't have to inspect raw milk. And the first inspector that we had at our farm in southern Maryland when we started, we were making cheese, but of course I wanted to do raw milk. And the inspector said, Sally, we just don't have the manpower to inspect all these little farms. The same reason, just the laziness of bureaucrats. They don't want to do the work of inspecting a lot of small farms. So what happens to all of these vitamins and minerals when we pasteurize? They are not assimilated as well. They're not absorbed as well. Animal studies, there were some animal studies done. You can't do animal studies today or you lose your funding, but on milk, I mean. Better calcium assimilation. Animals on raw milk had longer bones, a lot more density in the bones. Better iron assimilation. Animals on pasteurized milk became anemic, even though there's iron in the milk, because they could not assimilate it. Better B12 assimilation, and the riboflavin was completely destroyed by pasteurization. I loved Joel's talk last time about trying to find out why his chickens had these tendon problems and their feet turned over, and he read all the animal books, and he finally found one that said it was a riboflavin deficiency. And so your kids are having rheumatoid arthritis, tendon problems, cry because their joints hurt or their tendons hurt. That's the riboflavin, and that's completely destroyed by pasteurization. In 1943, a doctor, and this is the man doctor, his name is Evelyn, but it was the man's name, the London Hospital wrote, in certain institutions, children who were brought up on raw milk had perfect teeth and no decay. The result is so striking and unusual that it will undoubtedly be made the subject of a further inquiry. In 1943, have we had further inquiry? What happened was that in 1945, something called Coronet Magazine published an article about a town called Crossroads, USA, where they had an outbreak of undulant fever that killed a third of the townspeople. And this article was repeated in the Reader's Digest the next year, 1946. There's one little problem. There's no town of Crossroads. It never existed. They just made it up. They just made up the outbreak of undulant fever. They just lied about this. And so this was the basis for mandatory pasteurization that came a couple of years later. Now, people say, well, all this stuff about raw milk is old studies, back in the 40s and the 30s. Well, there's a new study, 2019, came out of China, and they looked at the effect of processing on milk proteins. They did 4 things to the milk. One is they boiled it, presumably to imitate pasteurization. They did spray drying, which is very high temperature. They did freeze drying, and they did microwaving. Okay? All four methods resulted in significant degradation and oxidation of the milk proteins, including freeze drying. Pretty shocking, actually. When fed to rats, the processed milk proteins caused damage in the plasma, liver, and the brain, and adversely affected learning and memory in rats. Okay, that's what we're doing to all of our milk. And where are we seeing the worst effects of this? But in the learning ability of our children. And then we have this idea of turning the cow into a unit of production, an industrial animal, and feeding this cow any old thing instead of what the cow was designed to do. You know, the cow has 4 stomachs and is the animal that is most exquisitely designed to eat grass. We're feeding our cows anything but grass. We feed them soybeans, which, and by the way, we all know that milk reflects the diet of the mother or the animal. So the allergenic soy proteins, the estrogenic isoflavones, the glyphosate, all comes through in the milk. We feed bakery waste to our cows, old donuts and potato chips.
How stupid
all of those rancid fats come through. One of the worst things we're giving our cows is citrus peel cake. This is the waste product of the orange juice industry. And citrus has some of the worst pesticides on it that have ever been invented. Cholinesterase inhibitors, which act as nerve poisons. In fact, the one processed food that is most associated with Alzheimer's in a very good study was fruit juice. That would be mostly orange juice.